You step beyond the towering walls of an ancient Egyptian palace, leaving behind the dust of the city and the endless fields along the Nile. The air inside feels different. Quieter, heavier with incense and authority. These palaces were not simply homes for kings. They were vast living centers of administration, ritual, and daily life. Places where power flowed through corridors of painted stone and shaded courtyards filled with servants, guards, officials, and artists. In the world outside, Egypt appears rigid and orderly, ruled by a divine pharaoh whose authority reaches from the delta to the southern deserts. But inside the palace complex, life unfolds in layers far more intricate than the monuments suggest. At the very center of this system stands the pharaoh, regarded not merely as a ruler, but as a living bridge between humanity and the gods. His presence defines everything around him. His chambers lie deep within the palace, protected by guards, servants, and layers of ritual protocol. Few people ever see him directly. Yet, the entire palace exists to support his rule, his household, and the image of divine order he represents to the kingdom. Surrounding this inner circle are the nobles of Egypt, powerful families who manage land, armies, and administration. They arrive in the palace dressed in fine linen, adorned with jewelry that reflects the wealth of their estates. These nobles advise the ruler, organize trade, command labor, and compete quietly for influence within the court. Their lives revolve around prestige, reputation, and proximity to royal favor. Then come the priests, figures whose authority comes not from political power, but from the sacred world. Egyptian religion touches every aspect of life. And the palace itself often contains shrines and temples where rituals are performed daily. Priests move through these spaces with solemn discipline, conducting ceremonies meant to maintain harmony between the human world and the divine forces believed to sustain Egypt. Below them exist the countless workers who keep the palace alive, scribes who record taxes and grain supplies, cooks who prepare elaborate meals, guards who patrol the entrances, and servants who carry water, clean rooms, and maintain the endless routines of palace life. Without them, the machinery of royal existence would collapse. But hidden among these layers is another group, one that does not fit neatly into the rigid social structure of ancient Egypt. They are the entertainers. You begin to notice them in the quieter corners of palace life. A musician tuning the strings of a harp beside a column painted with lotus flowers. A dancer stretching before a performance in a shaded courtyard. A storyteller rehearsing a tale meant to bring laughter to a royal gathering. An acrobat practicing balance and agility, while palace guards watch with quiet curiosity. And sometimes, a court jester preparing clever gestures meant to amuse nobles who spend their days surrounded by ceremony and seriousness. These performers bring sound, movement, and humor into a place otherwise defined by power and hierarchy. Their presence softens the rigid atmosphere of court life. Music echoes through banquet halls during celebrations. Dancers transform religious festivals into spectacles of color and rhythm. Storytellers captivate audiences with myths, adventures, and clever observations about the human condition. Yet, their place in society remains unusual. They live closer to the center of power than most Egyptians will ever come. They walk the same corridors as nobles and sometimes perform only a few steps away from the pharaoh himself. Their talents grant them access to spaces where decisions shaping the entire kingdom are quietly made. But they are not members of the elite. They do not inherit noble titles. They do not command land or armies. Their status depends entirely on their skill and on the favor of those they entertain. In this strange balance, they occupy a position both privileged and fragile. Admired in moments of celebration, yet always aware that their place within the palace exists only as long as their performances delight those who watch. You begin to understand that inside these walls, entertainment is not a trivial luxury. It is woven into the very rhythm of palace life. Music accompanies banquets, rituals, and diplomatic gatherings. Performances create moments of relief in a world governed by protocol and political tension. And as you observe these artists preparing their instruments, practicing their movements, and waiting for the next royal event, a question slowly begins to form. If these entertainers lived so close to the most powerful people in Egypt, what exactly did they do to captivate the court? As the sun sinks behind the desert horizon and the palace courtyards begin to glow with torchlight, the atmosphere inside the royal residence slowly changes. The rigid silence of administrative meetings fades, replaced by anticipation. Servants move quickly through the halls carrying trays of wine and fragrant food, while officials prepare the great banquet rooms where Egypt's most powerful figures will soon gather. You can feel the shift immediately. What was once a center of government is about to transform into a stage of spectacle. This is when the entertainers step forward. In one corner of the hall, musicians prepare their instruments. The Egyptian harp, tall and elegant, rests against a carved column while its player carefully tests each string. Nearby, a flute player lifts a slender reed instrument to his lips, producing soft notes that echo gently across the room. Percussionists hold small drums and clappers made of wood or ivory, ready to guide the rhythm that will soon fill the palace chamber. Their music is not random entertainment. It is carefully crafted sound design to shape the mood of the entire gathering. You watch as the first melodies begin to rise into the air. The harp produces deep, resonant tones that ripple through the room like water moving along the Nile. The flute answers with lighter notes that weave through the rhythm, while percussion creates a steady pulse that anchors the entire performance. Soon the singers join them, their voices rising in controlled harmony. These singers are highly trained, capable of sustaining long, melodic lines that echo through the decorated halls. Their voices transform the palace into something almost sacred, blurring the line between celebration and ritual. Then the dancers appear. Their movements are precise and fluid, shaped by years of discipline. Many of them have trained since childhood, learning to control every motion of their bodies so that each gesture appears effortless. In some moments, the dances carry deep religious meaning. Slow, ceremonial movements reenact stories connected to the gods, reflecting the cosmic balance that Egyptian belief holds sacred. The dancers' arms curve like flowing water, their steps measured and symbolic, mirroring the harmony that the pharaoh is believed to maintain throughout the land. But the atmosphere shifts again as the evening progresses. Religious formality gradually gives way to celebration. Now, the dancers move with greater freedom, their performances becoming more energetic and expressive. These are the festive dances of the royal banquets, meant to entertain the nobles gathered around, low tables filled with food and wine. Laughter spreads through the hall as guests watch the performers glide across polished floors. Jewelry catches the light of oil lamps, and the scent of roasted meats mixes with incense drifting from nearby shrines. You look around the banquet chamber and realize how carefully orchestrated everything is. The nobles recline comfortably, drinking wine poured from decorated jars. Plates overflow with fruits, bread, fish, and delicacies from distant regions of the kingdom. Servants refill cups, while musicians maintain the rhythm of the evening. The entertainers move constantly, ensuring that the flow of music and performance never stops. This is more than amusement. Within the palace, entertainment plays a quiet but important political role. Banquets provide opportunities for alliances to form, for diplomatic guests to be impressed, and for the power of the Pharaoh's court to be displayed through elegance and abundance. The music, the dancers, the storytellers, and the acrobats all contribute to a carefully crafted atmosphere of prosperity and cultural refinement. Every note played and every movement performed reinforces the image of a kingdom blessed with harmony and wealth. In these moments, the entertainers become instruments of royal authority. Their talent helps transform ordinary gatherings into unforgettable spectacles that demonstrate the sophistication of the Egyptian court. Foreign visitors who witness these celebrations leave with powerful impressions of the civilization they have encountered. Even nobles who already serve the pharaoh are reminded of the grandeur surrounding his rule. Yet, as you watch the performers move through the glowing halls of the palace, another truth begins to emerge beneath the beauty of the spectacle. The musicians smile while they play, the dancers glide with flawless grace, and the singers project voices filled with confidence. But their entire world depends on the approval of the powerful audience before them. A single evening can elevate a performer's reputation or quietly erase it. Living so close to the center of power brings admiration and opportunity, but it also carries constant uncertainty. And as the music fades and the banquet slowly comes to an end, you begin to realize something important about these palace entertainers. Standing only a few steps from the pharaoh does not guarantee safety. When the music fades and the palace halls grow quieter, you begin to see the lives of these entertainers more clearly. The glittering performances, the applause of nobles, and the elegance of royal banquets reveal only one side of their existence. Behind the rhythm of harps and the grace of dancers lies a far more complex human story. These performers are not simply artists who appear for celebrations and disappear afterward. They live within the palace world, navigating a life balanced between opportunity and uncertainty, comfort and vulnerability. Many of them did not begin their lives anywhere near such grandeur. You can imagine a young musician growing up in a modest household along the Nile, learning the basics of rhythm and melody from a parent who played instruments in local festivals. Others may have been noticed during religious ceremonies in temple complexes, where music and dance formed part of sacred rituals. Temples often served as training grounds for performers, teaching discipline, coordination, and the cultural traditions tied to Egyptian spirituality. A talented child who showed promise might be brought into a more formal environment of instruction, slowly preparing for the possibility of serving within the royal court. For some families, Having a child chosen to perform in the palace represented a rare opportunity. Life inside the court offered access to resources that most Egyptians could only imagine. Once accepted into the palace environment, entertainers often received food from royal kitchens and garments made from fine linen. Their clothing was lighter, cleaner, and more elegant than what most farmers or laborers could ever afford. Oils, cosmetics, and jewelry were sometimes provided as part of their appearance, enhancing the visual beauty expected during performances. You might picture a young dancer preparing for an evening event, carefully adjusting bracelets that shimmer under torchlight, while musicians nearby tune their instruments. Compared with the harsh agricultural life outside the palace walls, their existence appears almost luxurious. Meals are regular, the living quarters are safer, and daily routines revolve around art rather than physical labor in the fields. Yet comfort within the palace never means security. Everything about their life depends on the favor of those they serve. A noble who enjoys a particular musician's performance might ensure that artist remains employed for years. But if the same noble loses interest, or if another performer captures attention more effectively, that protection can disappear almost instantly. Approval from powerful patrons is the invisible currency that determines whether an entertainer thrives or fades quietly into obscurity. This constant dependence creates tension within the performer community itself. Rivalries often develop between dancers, singers, and musicians who compete for the same opportunities. A particularly successful performance might elevate one entertainer's status while leaving another overlooked. In a place where recognition determines survival, even friendships can carry an undercurrent of competition. Dancers, especially, face a fragile future. Their art relies heavily on youth, flexibility, and physical strength. Years of training allow them to move with extraordinary grace, but time eventually changes every body. As performers grow older, maintaining the demanding movements of court dance becomes increasingly difficult. Some dancers transition into teaching younger performers, passing down routines and techniques they once mastered. Others struggle to find a new place within the palace hierarchy. Musicians sometimes enjoy longer careers, since mastery of an instrument can deepen with age. A skilled harpist or singer might remain respected for decades if their talent continues to impress audiences. But even they remain tied to the unpredictable environment of court life, where political changes or shifting tastes among nobles can alter fortunes overnight. Standing within the palace corridors, you realize that these entertainers exist in a delicate space between worlds. They walk the same halls as princes and high officials. They witness celebrations that mark the triumphs of the kingdom. Yet, they possess none of the protections that shield Egypt's ruling class from hardship. Their proximity to power is real, but it offers no permanent guarantee of stability. They live close enough to hear the decisions that shape the nation, but far enough from authority to be replaced without ceremony. Still, despite this fragile position, some entertainers manage to leave traces strong enough to survive thousands of years. Their stories did not vanish completely. In the next chapter, you will discover how echoes of their lives remain preserved in tomb paintings, ancient instruments, and archaeological discoveries that reveal the surprising legacy of those who once performed inside Egypt's royal palaces. As you step back from the imagined halls of the palace and return to the quiet distance of history, the world of these entertainers does not vanish entirely. Their voices are gone. Their music no longer echoes through royal chambers. And the dancers who once moved beneath painted ceilings have long since faded into the passage of time. Yet fragments of their lives remain, preserved in places where ancient Egyptians believed memory could endure forever. If you walk through the tombs carved into desert cliffs or explore the walls of burial chambers hidden beneath the sands, you begin to notice something remarkable. Among the grand images of gods, kings, and sacred rituals, there are scenes of music and movement, glimpses of performers whose art once filled the palaces with life. You see harpists seated gracefully, their fingers touching curved strings carved in careful detail. Their instruments arch like elegant bows, larger than the musicians themselves, suggesting the importance of sound in the world they inhabited. Nearby, flute players raise slender reeds toward their lips, frozen forever in the moment of performance. Percussionists hold small drums and wooden clappers, ready to create rhythm that once echoed through corridors of stone. These images are not random decorations. They are deliberate records of a cultural world where music accompanied both celebration and ceremony. The dancers appear as well, captured mid-movement on painted walls. Their bodies curve with extraordinary fluidity, arms extended in gestures that still seem alive despite the centuries that separate you from them. Jewelry hangs from their wrists and ankles, and their linen garments flow around them, as though the artist wished to preserve the illusion of motion itself. When you study these scenes carefully, you realize that ancient Egyptians considered these performances significant enough to accompany the dead into eternity. Archaeology has also revealed the physical tools of their craft. Excavations in temples and burial sites have uncovered harps, flutes, and percussion instruments crafted from wood, bone, and precious metals. Some still carry traces of paint or decorative carvings, reminders that these objects were once handled by skilled performers who understood how to shape sound and emotion within the palace environment. Even in silence, these instruments tell stories of rehearsals, banquets, and ceremonies where music guided the rhythm of royal life. Through these discoveries, a clearer picture begins to emerge. Entertainers were not merely background figures in the Egyptian court. Their presence helped define the atmosphere of the palace itself. When foreign diplomats arrived to negotiate alliances, music softened the tension of formal gatherings. When festivals honored the gods or celebrated victories, dancers transformed ritual into spectacle. When nobles gathered to dine beneath the glow of oil lamps, singers and musicians created an environment of elegance and refinement that reflected the wealth of the kingdom. In this way, their art became part of the political language of power. Performances communicated stability, prosperity, and cultural sophistication to everyone who witnessed them. The court was not only a place of decisions and authority, it was also a stage where Egypt displayed its identity to the world. Yet, even as their influence shaped palace life, the entertainers themselves remained largely invisible within official history. Royal inscriptions praised pharaohs, victories, and divine favor, but rarely recorded the names of those who played music or danced beside the throne. Their contributions survived, not through written chronicles, but through images. instruments, and scattered archaeological clues that hint at the vibrant world they once inhabited. Standing here, at the edge of this long-forgotten story, you begin to understand the paradox that defined their existence. These performers lived in the shadow of immense power. They walked the same halls as pharaohs and nobles, yet they belonged to a world entirely their own. Their lives revolved around rhythm, creativity, discipline, and the constant effort to captivate audiences whose approval could shape their future. They existed between two realities, close enough to power to witness its rituals and celebrations, yet distant enough to remain outside the structures that protected the ruling class. Their world was built from talent, performance, and resilience. They lived between pharaohs and nobles, but they belonged to a realm defined not by titles or authority. It was a realm of art, spectacle, and survival, where music and movement carried human emotion through the corridors of ancient power. And even after thousands of years, the silent figures painted on tomb walls still seem to whisper the same truth. That behind the monuments of kings stood countless individuals whose creativity helped shape the life of one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known.